Hey guys, so this week's Table Talk Thursday is on the topic of Colin Kaepernick. Should athletes be allowed to protest? Now let's set the ground rules right here. Remember, no personal attacks on other people's views, no personal attacks on the topic itself, because I'd rather stay away from any negative stereotypes, and I'm not going to do this at all in my video. And please, I want to hear more feedback. I really want to have this talk. This was actually suggested to me last week by Liquid Ghost, so thank you for this topic. Now, let's set up my thoughts. Do I agree with what Colin Kaepernick did? Not at all. Do I think athletes have the right to protest? Yes. Do I think Kaepernick did it the right way or for the right reason? No. Who would I think is a better example of somebody, an athlete, a black athlete protesting? Well, I have three main examples, but they're going to be four different people. My very first one is going to be Jesse Owens. I mean, think about this. 1936, he goes to the Olympics in Berlin. This is a time where you still have segregation, where you have African Americans being treated horribly, and Owens decides he's going to not only be an athlete in the Olympics, he's representing the United States, but he's going to run against the Nazis because he's going to prove to everybody that African Americans are equal. And that's exactly what Owens did. I mean, excuse my laptop in front of me. I had notes, but my printer isn't working. So Jesse goes to the Berlin Olympics. He beats all of the Germans. He stands on the podium receiving the gold medal, and the whole time he's there, he has his hand over his heart. And how is that a form of protest? Well, he did it against the odds. This was a group of people who didn't want Owens on the track field. They didn't want Owens running, but he still did it because he was going to represent his country to show that African Americans were equal. And Owens was a part of the African American community. He was a big part of it. And there's pictures of him all over the place where he is showing that love back to his community, where he's coming into the troops and he's talking to the African American troops and the white troops, and he's creating that bridge. The second figure I'm going to talk about is Jackie Robinson. This man, if you've never seen the movie 42, I suggest you watch it as soon as possible, because Robinson was the first African American to break into Major League Baseball. He did this in 1947, and he was picked up by the Brooklyn Dodgers. And he's picked up by the manager, Leo Dorchet, and the owner, whose name right now eludes me. Now, Dorchet said to him point blank, look, you're going to have to go through a lot. You're going to have very thick skin. You're going to have to ignore what everybody else says, because if you don't, they're going to portray you as the angry black man who is the reason why whites and blacks can't play. Everybody's looking at you. So this is your moment to protest. This is your moment to prove yourself. And that's exactly what Robinson did. He ignored the people who were calling him names. He ignored the people who were sending him and his family death threats. And you know what he did? He played baseball. He kept his mouth shut, even though he wanted so badly. And his wife even says this in her interviews, that he so badly wanted to say something to these people, but he realized that if he did, the moment he opened his mouth, that they would turn it against him. And a lot of his teammates at first didn't like him. I mean, you had a lot of them turn against him. And one of his biggest defenders was a teammate at first who didn't like him, which was Harold Pee Wee Reese, who was famous for defending Robinson. And the reason why at first he didn't like him, because he was from Kentucky. He was used to that southern mindset, and he said, I don't see color anymore. I'm going to play with this guy. We're going to play together. And that's probably one of the most poetic scenes out of that movie, because Robinson did protest. He did it in the right way, because he was doing it to prove a point to everybody else that I'm exactly like any other white baseball player. I can do it myself. Now, the final group I'm going to talk about is two. In 1968, at the Olympics, you have two runners, Tommie Smith and John Carlos, who, in the Mexican Games, they give the Black Power salute. Why? Because they were protesting the ill treatment of African Americans in the South. Now, they stood during the national anthem. They did it during the national anthem, but they stood and still showed respect to their nation. But they did solidarity with the black movement, the civil rights movement, by doing this. Now, I fully agree with that. I mean, that's the perfect way, because that's a symbol that you're not only showing that you're American, that you are going through strife, or your ethnic minorities going through strife, that you're going to stand for what's right. And these two men protested at the Olympics after winning the 200-meter weight race. Now, Tommie Smith wins the 200 meters. And a lot of people kind of at the time were like saying it was ugly, nasty, but they did something appropriate. They made it positive because they were trying to bring awareness across the world rather than just kind of in a small group of people. And there's actually a tribute statue of this moment at San Jose University, which I find amazing. I think it's perfect. I think it's the perfect tribute to these two men, and that's the appropriate way of protesting a movement, a cultural movement, a social movement that you don't always agree with. And I mean, they went through a lot. Now, when it comes to Kaepernick, this is where I run into problems, is what he says he's protesting. He says African Americans are oppressed. And I won't deny oppression happens. I won't deny it happens in the world. I won't deny that it sometimes happens in the U.S. But when you're a football player making millions of dollars a year and you say you're being oppressed, I have a problem. If you're being oppressed, then what am I? I feel a more appropriate response to Kaepernick for him to have done is maybe say, I won't put my hand over my heart, but I will still stand, because what about the African American veterans or the African Americans who died in the line of service for our country? You just kind of spat on them. And I feel like he should take the money that he claims of oppression he gets and donate it. Build a youth center in a underprivileged area. I mean, go to Baltimore, build a youth center, have a high school, have somewhere where you can have kids come together, because when they live in these poor communities, there's two options for them: either to get out or join a gang. And I feel like a lot of athletes do give back. I will fully admit that. I know Michael Jordan gave back. I know Lawrence Taylor gives back. I know a lot of these guys go back to their old communities and they try to make it better, but I looked to see if Kaepernick did anything like that, and I couldn't find it. And I think the most poetic person that has spoken on this issue is Cam Newton. Because Cam Newton said, I'm just going to not say anything about it because it's not my place to speak. And everybody gives Cam Newton a lot of hate because they claim that he cheated in college, that he did all these horrible things, but Cam Newton is probably one of the most well-spoken athletes I've listened to, and he's very intelligent. And he always comes across to me as a person who really does think through his actions, and he does speak from the heart. And I feel like Cam has given so much more back. And to me, it floors me. So that's my Thursday table talk. I think next week, I'm not sure what I'm going to do, so if you guys give me some suggestions, that'd be great. Leave a like, subscribe, comment down below. What do you think? Do you think Kaepernick is right, or do you think that he should have protested maybe in a different way? Maybe go back to what Jesse Owens did, or Jackie Robinson, or the '68 Olympians. What do you guys think? Bye!